Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In just a minute, we'll have a special guest on the channel. His name is Eric Bowman, and he published this amazing video called Your PhD in Jazz in 15 Minutes, which went really in depth. So what I did is I asked Eric to come on a call and explain some of these basic starting point principles for jazz guitars specifically. So starting with parent scale, modal applications, major scale, going to melodic minor, analyzing some standards, and some hints for us mortals that don't have a PhD in jazz. So let's see what Eric has to say for us in the jazz theory world. Welcome to Jazz Guitar Lessons, where we help guitarists learn jazz faster, express themselves more fluently, and have fun along the way. My name is Mark, and if you're looking to learn jazz, form better practice habits, and especially if you enjoy a French accent, make sure to subscribe. All right, I'd like to welcome Eric Bowman to the call with us. So I found Eric through his YouTube video called PhD in Jazz Theory in 15 Minutes, which it blew my mind. It was very complete, very thorough, and I wanted to see if we could interview Eric because I'm like, okay, I'm just a jazz guitarist. And for people that are just getting into that kind of harmony, that are not necessarily familiar with a lot of standards, what's the best place they could start with first principles? Like you started with the Harmonic series, which was awesome, and then how can we build stuff on top of that so it makes sense for an improviser, a comper, and also makes sense for understanding the chord movements from one to another into any good old standards.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the video basically starts with the Harmonic series. And for those of you who don't know, it's a mathematical formula, and it's a pattern that shows up in any resonant sound. And the first interval in the Harmonic series is an octave. And then after that, you have what we would call a musical fifth, like the fifth note of a scale. And that fifth is the foundation for Western harmony. And you hear it all over the place. Most chord movements from out in jazz, I would say, especially straight ahead jazz, moves in fifths or fourths, sometimes stepwise.
Right.
So understanding that and understanding how all of Western harmony came from that fifth, I think, is important. Even the major scale, you get the major scale by stacking fifths, and I have a 25 key keyboard here, but basically, if I stack fifths, that interval, and then I can hit the octave key here.
Nice.
All the way up to F sharp. If I were to narrow down that range into an octave, I'd get a major scale. And that major scale is going to get you a lot of mileage. You know, the major scale, you really actually use it over most chords in jazz. You know, I think jazz has a reputation for having too many chords, too many scales or whatever, but you can really get by like maybe 90% of the way with just the major scale.
But tell me, I have to take you up on that. What about this F sharp in the Harmonic series? How do you explain that? In the way you played the consecutive.
So the F sharp. Yeah, I think I lost your connection. Actually, it looks like your image froze.
Oh, sorry. How about now?
Hang on, let me check my connection.
I'm still recording on my.
Yeah, it's good now. It's a little bit degraded, but. So sorry, what was your question again?
My question is, I noticed when we do stack the fifth, we get the C and the G, the G and the D, the D and the A. Then after that, it gets iffy because we get a B and an F sharp. So how is that explainable from a modal standpoint?
Right. So if you were to shrink that sound, let me go back down here. All the way down into the narrowest octave, and if you were starting on C, you'd get this scale. And it's almost like a major scale, and you could say it is a major scale, but it's a different kind of major scale. It has that F sharp in it, whereas normally in C major, you'd have an F natural.
Right.
And so basically, that's just a mode of G major. If I were to move my starting note to G, you know, I have F sharp within the key.
Right. Got it. Yeah.
So you can get different modes from that major scale And those modes you can play over a lot of different chords. So one thing I talk about in my video is the phenomenon of a parent scale, which apparently is kind of a foreign concept to a lot of people based on the comments. But basically, the parent scale will tell you what type of extensions to put on a chord. So it's actually kind of simple. If you have a major chord, your parent scale is the Ionian mode, which is just that major scale that most people know.
Got it.
If the chord symbol is minor, and that could be minor 7, minor 9, minor 11, all of those will be Dorian.
Okay.
And then if it's a 7 chord, any kind of dominant chord, like a 7 chord, a 9 chord, 13, then you have the parent scale is Mixolydian, and that's the fifth mode of the major scale. So that would be as that lowered seventh.
Got it. So it means that essentially your 3 parent scales, you're saying, are the scales built on the 2, second degree on the 5, and on the 1 of the major scale. Not so surprisingly, right? Because that's the cadence. That's the cadence in mainstream
Right,
jazz.
yeah. So like in C major, like if you were playing a tune in C major, you'd probably see, especially if it's a straight ahead jazz chart, you'd probably see like a 2-5-1 in C major, and you might see D7 to G7, or sorry, D minor 7 to G7 to C major. And so over that D minor chord, you'd be playing D Dorian, the second mode of C major. Over the G7 chord, you'd be playing G Mixolydian, the fifth mode of C major. And then, of course, over C major, you're just playing the first mode, Ionian.
Got it. Great. And where do you go from there after we look at it from both a parent scale view, which it means D Dorian is all the natural notes, right? D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Then G is the same. It's all the notes. So we can say all these chords have the same parent scale. So people will say, well, why not just think I'm improvising C major? Is that an approach you would take to summarize all the chords to the same key, or do you still refer to the concept of modes in your own composition and playing?
Well, it starts becoming useful, this idea of thinking of a parent scale, when you start adding more extensions, like past the seventh. So this was a commonly brought up point from the comment section of my video was, some people would say, like, if you're in C major, let's say you see an E minor chord, right? Well, I just told you that Dorian is the parent scale for minor, but some people would say, like, if you see an E minor chord in C major, you should be playing Phrygian, the third mode, right? Because we're just staying in C major.
Right.
And that has a flat 9 in it, right? F natural.
F natural, right? Mm-hmm.
But what if you're playing a chart and, like, let's say you're in C major and you see an E minor 9 chord?
So
do you play an F
sharp.
natural or an F sharp? Yeah, you would expect to hear an F sharp in that chord. If it were a minor flat 9 chord,
ouch,
it's very dissonant. And there's nothing wrong with it. You could definitely make that sound musical if you finesse it. But if you were writing that chord and you were reading it in a chart, the author would probably expect you to play an F sharp there.
Got it. So same with if it's followed by an A7, so E minor 7, A7 both have the parent scale of D major, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then back to your D minor 7, G7 to recap home. Okay. So that's a good starting use of parent scales when it's non-diatonic.
Yeah, definitely. And if you were to see that chord out of context, like in a modern jazz setting, then you really need those parent scales because, if let's say it's either, there's like it's not very certain what the tonal center is. Let's say you're playing like Iris by Wayne Shorter.
Right.
It's not extremely clear. You could say it's part of it's in like C minor, but if you see these chords with 9s, 11s, 13s, there needs to be some sort of system in place to let you know what's expected from that chord. You can play whatever you want, but specificity, in my opinion, is important because a natural 13 and a flat 13 are going to sound very different.
Exactly. Okay. Wow, that's a great thing. And also, I'm reminded maybe some Chick Corea tunes like
Yeah.
windows and stuff like that. They just go places and go, what's that? And we would
Sure.
default to probably a minor 9. That's more common. Okay, very good. And where do we go from there? Say we built a major scale. We understand the concept of parent scale for modes, so the 3 main ones. After that, we start to make sense of progressions. Where does it take us?
Yeah. And before we go there, Windows is actually a great example.
Okay.
If you don't mind just taking a little detour, because
please. Yeah.
it's been a while since I've played the tune, but I think it goes B minor to A flat half diminished.
Let me pull it off. I'll grab a chart. I'll grab the iReal.
And then it's like...
right.
So over that half diminished, I think the melody actually, and it might be once it's at the C sharp 7 chord, but let's say you're playing this tune and you get to G sharp half diminished. What's the parent scale for that? And this actually kind of answers your previous question as well. Where do we go from there? Well, melodic minor is also really important in jazz. And it's applicable to a few chords. I'd say maybe the most common one is that G sharp minor 7 flat 5 or half diminished. And yeah, so you can see in measure
here,
is that
right?
6? Yeah, well, the next measure you see an A sharp.
Right.
And
here.
most of the time, well, the 2 measures before.
Oh, this guy.
The last measure of the first line.
Oh, these two. Sorry,
Yeah.
my bad. Okay.
Yeah, that A sharp right there. That's a natural 9. And most of the time when people are improvising over a half diminished chord, it's in the context of a minor 2-5-1, right?
It is, yeah.
So in this case, like you might see, let's say you're playing an F sharp minor, you might see that G sharp half diminished chord. And in the key of F sharp minor, you have an A natural, not an A sharp.
Right. Because
So
that's a
most
minor
of the,
third.
like if you're taking that key driven approach, that works. You can definitely play either one, but in the context of like a modern jazz tune like Windows, he's opting for that natural 9, which comes from the melodic minor scale.
Okay.
So in my opinion, the parent scale for a half diminished chord is the 6th mode of melodic minor.
Okay, let's recap that quickly for mortal guitarists. So you're meaning this chord, typically people say, oh, well, that's part of a minor, 2-5, fine. But then we go, well, the melody has an A sharp, it has it both times. So you would say that I'm not gonna write parent, but the parent would be B melodic minor, right? That's what you're saying.
Exactly.
Okay. Got it. So of course the song is in B, so it's not so surprising, but what we can say is that lives actually on the degree number 6 of the scale of melodic minor. Great. Is that right? Yeah. So it affords us to play this kind. I'm going to be a guitarist for a moment because, so it affords us the capacity to have a chord like this, but to have that natural line versus that would be like the Locrian approach that I don't really like. So
which, works well as like a passing tone, especially when you're playing, let's say you're playing like Softly as in a Morning Sunrise. You're going like 1-6-2-5 pretty quickly, and if you're playing notes, if you're playing changes that go by kind of quickly, you're probably just going to be playing in the minor key. Yeah, and you're not going to notice that clash as much if you're playing, let's say you're playing Softly as in a Morning Sunrise in C minor, and you see a D half diminished chord. E flat's going to sound perfectly fine, especially as a passing tone over that chord. But in Windows, he's really camping out on that half diminished chord, which is pretty rare. It's there for a long time. And so he's holding out that natural 9, which sounds a lot less dissonant. Very
cool. So parent scale, both the modes of the major scale and modes of melodic minor bring a lot of value. Maybe we can do another detour to looking at the melodic minor of C, but question, while I have an expert on hand, what do you think is Joe Henderson's thing on Inner Urge? Maybe do you think that's also the whole like modal melodic minor approach you would take on that first chord?
It's been a while. Can you pull up the chart for Inner Urge? Like I'm sure there are probably chords in here. Yeah, there you have it. F sharp minor 7 flat 5. And he's playing, looks like there
It's
are
not
no
in the melody.
nines, but if you were to play that chord and you wanted to add a 9, you'd probably want it to be a natural 9 unless you
Yeah.
wanted to really lean into the dissonance.
Okay, good. It was such a badass tune as well.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, all right, we went on this quick tangent on the melodic minor. So, how do we extract a melodic minor from first principles? Do we grab the harmonic series as well, or what's your starting point for this one?
It kind of exists in the harmonic series because if you play all the odd ordered harmonics, meaning like the first, third, fifth, seventh, it'll spell out a dominant sharp 11 chord.
Right.
So this is going to be kind of hard to do with my tiny keyboard, but let's do it in C. Sir, let's do it down an octave. So down there, then you'd have the third harmonic there, fifth harmonic here, seventh harmonic here, ninth, and then 11th harmonic.
And that's G melodic minor. That's what you're saying. Aha.
Exactly.
Got you. So it's like the harmonic series of C's spells the fourth mode of G melodic minor.
Exactly.
Neat.
Yeah, and it's like it's higher up there than the major scale. You get it from just that first unique interval of the harmonic series, right? That fifth, and you just keep repeating it. But yeah, like the chord that you get from the harmonic series actually lines up well with the melodic minor scale.
Awesome. Wow. And
it's not completely in tune with like equal temperament, but it's the same notes.
Yeah, we sort of tweaked it so we would adapt to it. Great. And we talked about the major scale as a parent to extract the Dorian, the Mixolydian, and the Ionian, so 2, 5, and 1. So for melodic minor, we already touched on the 6th degree. Is there any other parent scale modality with the melodic minor you consider important?
Yeah, well, like that harmonic series chord, like that's a dominant sharp 11 chord. So if you had C7 sharp 11, C9 sharp 11, C13 sharp 11, any type of dominant chord with a sharp 11 and a natural 9, you would play a melodic minor. And like you said, that's the fourth mode. Okay,
so fourth mode, sixth mode, first mode. Obviously,
first mode, yeah, especially when you're playing in a minor key and you're resolving to a minor chord, like let's say softly as in a morning sunrise. It's not very typical to resolve to a minor 7 chord, because when you have a minor 7 chord, you're going to kind of expect sort of like that movement. It sounds almost functional, whereas like a minor 6 or a minor major 7 chord kind of camps out a little bit more.
Sits. Right, yeah, it's more like...
it sounds more like a point of resolution.
Okay, beautiful. Hey guys, just a quick note. If you're enjoying this content and you're eager to boost your own jazz guitar playing, then connect with us. We've transformed the jazz skills of thousands of guitarists. You can find the link in the description or head directly over to jazzguitarlessons.net to begin your journey. All right, let's dive back into the episode. And where do we go from here? We got a major scale, we got a melodic minor, we're understanding the modal parent scale approach. We haven't really talked about functions yet. Where do we go next?
Yeah, so that covers probably 95% of the chords and scales you need, right? It's just 2 scales, which is kind of a relief. And just practicing the different modes of those scales will get you ready to play over all sorts of different chords. So I think just taking a tune and plugging in, figuring out what the parent scales are for these different chords could be really useful. Most of the time it's going to be the major scale, and then for some of those juicier chords you might see melodic minor as well.
Beautiful. Do you have a tune in mind you'd like to look at quickly?
Trying to think of a good one that might have a mix of both. maybe like
Wayne Shorter. Wayne Shorter stuff.
Wayne Shorter is going to be a lot of melodic minor. Well, it would be both. We could look at a Wayne Shorter tune, but to keep it simple, let's do something maybe like "Someday My Prince Will Come."
Beautiful. Okay, I love that song, and I was discussing it with some students, and that second chord I think is probably a misnomer. I'll pull out the chart. This guy, this guy here is labeled as sharp 5. This is a sharp 5 as well. I'm like, well, it's probably a flat 13. It doesn't really function that way, but I'll let you take it away if you want.
Interesting. Well, I'd like to hear your perspective on that flat 13 versus sharp 5 argument.
Well, for this one, for the G, and I'll go out on a limb because you're the expert, but since we're going to C and we're like setting up a resolution to C, so we can use the B flat major scale and just add a B natural in order to get that. But if we did that and we just have a raised B, this does not apply. Actually, it's a G7 flat 13. That's a chord for that key, because now it's C melodic minor of destination, how I like to call it. And I think we're more used to this sound like flat 13, flat 9 for immediately altered dominance, and that's a mode of harmonic minor, which we haven't talked about yet. So that's why I would think, well, my perspective on it is, well, let's call it a flat 13, and at least we preserve the D natural in there, and we have an E flat, right? So, but it's not the ultimate view on it, but I'd be happy to hear your take.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get a different answer from every jazz musician, which I think is great. Like, there's no right answer for sure. And another interesting thing that someone brought up, because I was mentioning scales in my video, and I said, once you've got the major scale and the melodic minor scale, that's about 95% of it. And I talk about diminished and whole tone. Right. And then I say, there's other scales too, like melodic minor, melodic major, that are also used, but I said they're very rarely used. And someone from Brazil actually said, in Brazil we play harmonic minor all the time. And that's probably true, because a lot of the time in, let's say, maybe like a more traditional or like folk music, if you were in a minor key and you were playing a melody over the 5 chord, I would say it is pretty common to be playing harmonic minor, right? So like if I'm in C minor, and then I go to the G7 chord or G7 flat 9, the velocity is really sensitive on this keyboard, but yeah, bear with me. Anyways, if you could play over that G7 chord a lot of different options, right? And one of those options is C melodic minor. So you could play, right?
So that's right.
Yeah, and I think that does sound good. That's definitely an option. And let's say you're playing over this chord in Someday My Prince Will Come. That is an option, especially since you're going to C minor, and it fits with the melody. That option has both the fifth and either, depending on whether you want to call it the flat 13, I would call it the flat 13 in this case, or the sharp 5. Now, if you're calling it sharp 5, it's probably because you're not intending for that harmonic minor sound to be used, in my opinion.
Right.
Because it wouldn't have a D, right? If the D would be sharp, it would be D sharp.
Exactly.
So what scale would you use if it said sharp 5? And here's another application of the melodic minor scale. I would say you'd be using A flat melodic minor over that chord.
Okay, so a G altered, a G fully altered is what you mean. Yeah, okay. Now we're in business. Woo!
So, if you're playing that chord, you could leave that option open for both. You could be playing E flat And that D, you could use it as a passing tone. You could play either one. So it's an option. You have options over a tune like this.
Got it. Got it. I think if it says like outright flat 13, flat 9 on a chart, that's like obviously implying the harmonic minor of destination of the C. And now this is pure G altered, so it's another mode for which the parent scale we haven't discussed. It's so that's the seventh mode.
Yeah, and this also leaves more options too, because it says just G7.
Sharp
What
5.
does it say? Sharp 5.
Just sharp
Right.
5
So
on the chart, yeah.
we could also use whole tone over that because it doesn't say what kind of 9 we're playing.
Right.
I played a sharp 9 in that chord,
Yeah.
but we could play a natural 9 too. Oh, whoops. There we go.
Okay.
There it is.
And go like
Yeah,
play just
exactly.
a series of whole tones.
Yeah, and it doesn't conflict with the melody, which is important when you're considering what options to use. So you have all sorts of options over that chord.
Awesome. Okay. Sorry, I think I've interrupted by jumping into the G, but did you want to do a quick rundown of maybe parent scales from your perspective on the whole form?
Sure.
Okay.
So, the first chord, B flat major 7, you could be playing B flat major. You could also make it Lydian, right? Because you can play either one. So you could be playing E flat or E natural. And if you were playing E natural, that would be F major.
F major.
But they're
parent
both
scale.
the major scale.
Got
B
it.
flat major or F major.
Okay.
And on the second chord, if you wanted to use melodic minor, you'd be using E flat melodic minor there.
So this is a full D7 altered, sharp 5, sharp 9, flat 9, flat.
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Heavy. And that one is for sure Lydian, right? Because of that A note.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so you see a chord like this, this is where you can kind of use a key-driven approach where, okay, we're on the 4 chord, I can just play B flat major over this, which is E flat Lydian.
Parent scale again. Okay, beautiful. I love the way you think. So easy. And for that one,
All right, and then we covered this, you got options here, but if you wanted to do melodic minor, you could do A flat melodic minor, or you could do C harmonic minor. You could do G whole tone.
right. Okay.
You could, let's leave it at that.
Okay, good. But already, just knowing that you would go straight up, that is your first option for both, to have like 7th degree melodic minor, it sort of sheds light for me to go like, oh yeah, we could just parent scale major and melodic minor like all the time and still get a really, really good jazz sound. Really cool.
Yeah, and I think, to each their own. I would probably approach it from the melodic minor standpoint.
Okay.
And then that brings us to C minor 7.
Yeah.
Once again, we're still within the key of B flat major. This is the second mode of B flat major. Dorian, C Dorian.
Easy.
That's going to work well there.
Okay.
And we already covered the G7 sharp 5. We're back to C minor 7. F7, same thing, B flat major. We're still in B flat major. And then here's where it gets a little interesting again, because on D minor 7, this is the 3 chord. So once again, we have options. We could play the parent scale of D minor 7, which would be C major, right?
Okay.
This is D Dorian. Or because we're in B flat, we could play Phrygian, D Phrygian. And the difference is whether you want to stay in key or whether you want to play the most consonant option. Because if I'm playing D minor, let's say I'm playing D minor, let's play simple voicing. If I'm going to play a 9 and sit on that note, the E is going to sound a lot more consonant. If I play an E flat, right, that's really dissonant. But if you're playing it as like a passing tone, then it works.
Great. Okay. So two good options, and we haven't really addressed the whole diminished chord. So would you build a diminished scale, or just play on your arpeggio, or what's your take?
Yeah, so we talked about major, melodic, minor. We talked a little bit about whole tone, right? That's just a scale of all whole steps. And then that leaves diminished. And diminished is just alternating whole steps and half steps. And if it's a diminished chord, you use the whole half pattern. So over C sharp,
Got it.
you can also use that diminished chord over dominant chords. So if you go back to Someday My Prince Will Come, we could probably find an example where this might be applicable. There aren't really any written into the chart, but if you were improvising over this, you could turn, let's say, that F7 chord before the B flat major, you could turn that into an F7 flat 9 chord. So like right before the B section.
Right.
You know, if you're just doing a 2-5-1, you know, you could do 2, and then flat 9, and then resolve to major. And if you have that flat 9, that gives you options. Let's say you see F7 flat 9. What do you use there? You know, these parent scales are applicable until you have alterations to the extensions. And then you have to figure out, well, what's the chord? What's the scale? So if you had flat 9, F7 flat 9, especially leading to a major chord, you could play the half whole diminished from F7.
Got it. So it's almost as if you're saying, well, it's the A, it's my leading note that is my diminished chord. So it's the same application. Got it.
Right, yeah, exactly like if it were A diminished.
So it gives you an F13, flat 9, sharp 9 kind of sound. You get both these things, but you get the natural 13. Okay, interesting. Because in your melodic minor exploration, you get a natural 9 with the sharp 11. So, oh, that's really melodic minor. And now it's like, oh, we got a natural 13th, and the 9s are both at play. So it's beautiful. Okay, good. And in this case, I had a question from a student. They say, well, why not notate this as D flat diminished 7? Do you think it's a mislabeling, or what's your take on that?
What's their rationale? Because it's sort of like it's more
down.
related to D minor than it is C minor?
No, just because it's going down. The bass is like da da da. So I was just looking at this like, well, it's...
Yeah, I think you're about to say, kind of similar to what you said about the F7 chord, you could treat that like it's an A diminished chord, right? So you could also kind of treat the C sharp diminished chord almost like it's an A7 chord. And that's derived from D minor.
Got it. Ah, nice. Okay. I see. Good point. Okay.
Yeah. And a lot of times, you know, like the melody note is A too. And that note is going to sound really nice over that diminished chord. That it's technically a flat 13, I suppose you'd call it. Even though just the chord would be, but that's kind of bland if you put.
Nice. Okay. I gotta, what's the word, concur with you, because I went like plainly looking at D, C sharp, C. I'm like, oh, it would have been descending, but seeing in the light that it would be a D minor thing. And then there's this option of having an A7, which is related to D minor. Now the C sharp nomenclature just makes more sense. Okay. Did you want to finish for the last 8, or is there anything specific you'd like to address?
Well, so you know, the beginning of the B section is the same until you get to especially when you get to the chords you're pointing to. Most of the time I see the bar with the F7, I hear most people play F minor there.
Okay, got it.
But let's see. Oh, I'm thinking of something else. Yeah, you could go a lot of different directions with this. So, I gotta remind myself. Yeah, da 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 da. Here's what I. It's not there. I would normally hear.
Here?
I would hear a 2-5-1 to the 4 chord. So
Here?
in where it says B flat major 7 to D7 sharp 5, yeah, you could also play F minor 7,
To
B
this B
flat
flat.
7. And they put that in the top. It looks like it's kind of like another option that
Okay.
people use. But yeah, I usually think of that as a 2-5-1 to E flat major. But interestingly, in the last 4 bars, yeah, this E flat major 7 chord, they don't notate it. But look at that. We got a B natural.
Yeah, what's that? You would consider also another melodic minor mode, or it's just like an appoggiatura harmonically? Like, what's your take?
You could take, yeah, you could really interpret it a lot of different ways. Yeah, you could just say it's, a passing tone. Or you could interpret it as C melodic minor again.
So 3rd degree melodic minor, so we get that sharp 5 implicit to your parent
Yeah.
scale. Oof, that's another melodic minor mode.
Yeah,
Another
they're all over the place, it turns out.
Nice. Because the sharp 5 is the melody note, right? Because an E flat
Yeah.
would have, but not. Okay.
Yeah.
Oof, interesting.
And I think, with the 3rd mode of melodic minor, it's a little bit more rare, but I think you can treat it like that, you'd say like maybe that sharp 5 is like part of the chord. It's a very bright kind of mysterious sound. Or you could kind of treat it like, maybe like C minor 9 over E flat. And
Right.
then that's just kind of like passing, or like what you called it, an appoggiatura, I think.
Yeah, it's very Italian word. So like they put a, oh my god, my brain hurts. So a G major triad. That's part of the
Resolving to C minor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that does make sense. Okay. So we extracted another melodic minor mode to use melodic minor as a parent scale once again. So we had the 6th mode, 4th mode, the 1 mode, the altered, which is the 7th mode, now the 3rd mode, which would be this iffy, sort of very bright. It's a Lydian with a sharp 5, honestly. That's how it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And after we got that down, so we created a secondary 2-5 that's implicit here with our B flat. So make this an F minor instead and run to that thing and then do whatever we will with that. So 3rd mode melodic minor of C, and then here treat it the same as we did treat this one, or do you have any other?
Yeah. You could. It's a little different because it's actually kind of the same shape that you were playing over the C sharp diminished, but I would play that same shape over E. So over C sharp diminished, let's say I'm playing on piano one-hand voicing, I might play B flat, C sharp, E, A.
Right. Got it.
Right.
So nice.
Over the E diminished chord, I might play that same voicing.
But the bass note is okay. And it goes.
Yeah.
And it goes to. So you do. And the bass is moving in that direction. So.
Yeah, I kind of put it over F. I think it's a good point for a pedal point. I think everyone kind of implicitly has the Miles Davis version sort of just seared into their brain because it's just such a good take on the tune.
Plus, it starts with that long bass pedal, right? So we all have it, yeah. Okay, and then turn around at the end, so we get either in the chart it says like a 6-2-5, or it goes 2, 5, and 1 and conclude there? Would you say that's first ending, second ending type of thing? Or?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good way of thinking about it. I think, if you wanted to keep the pedal point going, you could kind of have like, think of it as like C minor over F. Don't pay too much attention to my keyboard. I'm working with 25 keys here. But, if let's pretend I could do it this, or something like that. Maybe like E flat over F, like an F sus chord, sus 9. And then you could think of like a D flat 7 over F. As like a substitution for the 6th chord. It's like a tritone sub of the 6th chord, but over F, the F pedal point.
All right, so play D flat here with your TT, right? Got it. Okay.
Wait, what does TT stand for?
Tritone.
Okay.
I made this up on the fly.
Okay. Yeah, so it'd be like D flat 7 over F. And then back to like, E flat over F, maybe, you could, and then finally go to F7. So you kind of get that movement from B flat to B flat to A, and then back to,
Oh, I love that. It's chromatic too. Okay. Never heard it this way. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's what PhDs in jazz give you. It's that look at the inner movement. I love that.
A little spice.
Okay. So we've done. We started from first principles. We got the harmonic series major scale. We got melodic minor. Then we wrestled over harmonic minor of destination depending on context. We extracted a whole bunch of parent scales. We did an analysis on a standard. So assuming someone is watching this and absorbs everything in one take or more than one take. By the way, shout out to your channel, Eric Bowman. I'll put it on the screen. First link in the description, of course. And I shared also to the fellowship, which is our free jazz guitar group. And I'm sharing this with my private coaching students because it's just fantastic. Assuming someone got all that, where would you launch them into so they can pursue their own jazz harmonic education?
I think it's going to really depend on where you're at. Like if you're watching this and you feel like when you're playing a standard like Someday My Prince Will Come, you can play it without really having to think very much, then you might be there. Or maybe you can start thinking about other options over some of these chords. Maybe over the G7 chords, you've always been playing C harmonic minor. Try experimenting with that altered sound, that A flat melodic minor. Start experimenting with whole tone. Experiment with some of those other options, those places where you can kind of, add some interpretation to it while paying respect to the melody and the vibe of the tune.
Great.
And if you're kind of overwhelmed and lost, like this is a lot of new information, I would recommend basically starting with the major scale and getting really comfortable with the major scale. And seeing how far you can get with that. So practicing 2-5-1s, 2-5-1s are, the most common progression in jazz, or 3-6-2-5-1, just try using the major scale over those chords and try to get comfortable with that context before moving on to the melodic minor. Once you've moved on to melodic minor, I think plugging it in context is more useful than anything. Where it's applicable. In a song like Someday My Prince Will Come, it was only applicable in a few places, and you can practice that context, I think would be more beneficial than just in isolation, melodic minor brain exercises.
Beautiful. Plus there are two components. So as you said, there's a bit of diminishing returns. Like I can cover all the territory with my major parent scale. And then I can start to narrow down and be really tweaking with melodic minor modes. And the way you use the word context is also how I use it in my coaching, which is hey, if it's the first time you see a diminished chord, it's like the first time you taste salt. But then you need to taste salt in like 10, 15, 20, 25 dishes, like a meal, before as a baby we're like, oh, we click in, this is salt. So context will dictate and clarify a whole bunch of things, because in isolation, we really want it to make sense and we really want to explain it. But often I'm at a loss for words other than look. You got to look at 10, 15, 20 standards. And then it's going to be, minor 7 flat 5. That's what Mark meant. That's what Eric meant.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
my take also.
Absolutely. Because, you could go through every single application of melodic minor, but to be honest, you're probably only going to encounter, 3 modes of it. You'll probably usually only see like, half diminished you can get away with Locrian. So you can get away with a major scale most of the time, unless you're doing something like Windows. On a dominant 7 sharp 5, you can get away with harmonic minor. It's when you're playing like a dominant 7 sharp 11. It's like, well, you kind of need to play melodic minor. Or if it's a minor major chord, that's the root of that chord.
The one
melodic minor.
Yeah, that's great, man. There's so many questions about the minor, saying, oh, natural minor is the one that's, parent scale major mode. It's there. So people ask me melodic versus harmonic versus natural versus, Dorian is a minor. How we go about this, and I think the talk we just had just clarified a lot of these things for me. It's like, oh, this is a prime example of modern use for melodic minor modes in jazz, in the context of an oldie, like an old, harmonically very straightforward tune, and looking at a Chick Corea song. So it's fantastic. Good job.
Yeah.
Parting thoughts? Any words of advice or wisdom?
Yeah, I would say, since, a lot of the viewers will have seen my video, and this lesson was very, a lot of information in a very tight amount of space, is, don't get overwhelmed by it. It's okay for it to be overwhelming, and it's expected for it to be overwhelming, especially if you haven't really studied jazz harmony. And the more you work on it, the more it all kind of just pieces together in your own way. Everyone kind of has their own way of making sense of harmony, and something like that E flat chord at the end of Someday My Prince Will Come. It's kind of hard to explain how I think of that chord. I almost think of that B natural as like an appoggiatura, like a leading tone or something. It's little things like that are context driven. And the more you just play music and play with other people and practice making music, the more this stuff will start making sense. Because if you try to just make sense of theory in this isolated vacuum, just digesting YouTube videos, and you're not really applying it to music, it's not really beneficial, in my opinion.
Beautiful. Thanks, Eric.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.
I think that's the time we have. So I'm going to let you go. And if anyone has any questions about this, of course, the comment section is going to be, I hear it, you hear it. It's blowing up right now. Because melodic minor modes. Check out Eric's channel. Please subscribe. You can go to the fellowship for all the free stuff, the standards, the stuff applied more so on the guitar. I hope that it was helpful too with the diagram, so we see the keyboard, but we saw some of the guitar stuff. That's really cool.
Yeah, forgive my my piano playing. I'm like reaching over my microphone with this 25 key keyboard.
Sounded good to me, man. It's good. And
Thank
that
you.
app for the techies, it's called Chordy.
Chordy app.
Chordy
and
app.
I think they sell it on Gumroad.
On Gumroad, perfect. Which you also have your synth patches and stuff on.
Yeah, so I sell synthesizer presets for the free Vital synthesizer, which is a really great synthesizer for learning sound design, if any of you guys are interested in that. And I also have tutorials on that on my channel. So if you're interested, check those out. And then my most popular preset packs are recreations of synthesizers from popular music. So, somebody will ask, how do I make the synth from Jump by Van Halen? I'll tweak the parameters and make it so that you could jump right in and play that same sound. And then also tweak it to kind of make it your own sound. So it's not something I hear a lot of people doing in the jazz world, but I'm excited to see people try.
Right. Yeah, I think there are crossovers too. People like studying jazz heavily and going into synths or different sounds. I don't know if you heard it. You know, this website Drumeo, this YouTube channel, they do. Here's this guy hearing Rage Against the Machine for the first time. So they make him hear a track with just the guitars, the vocals, and the bass, so no drums, and then they come up with their own version. So a few days ago, I saw the guy. I forgot his name, but he played with Snarky Puppy. And they put on Dua Lipa, like whatever, like one of her top hits, Vox and drums, and he just made it on the fly. I'm pretty sure he's got like the temperament, like you for tweaking synths and stuff, because he came up with stuff that was like clavinet sounding and what's the Moog bass. I'm not a piano guy, so that's something to check out for. So I have a lot of respect for that kind of craft as well, even though it's not like playing mainstream standards and whatever. It's a cool thing. Perfect.
Yeah,
definitely. So I'll let you go, Eric. You're welcome again on the channel anytime. It was a real pleasure to have you. All right, thanks for watching, guys. It was great to have Eric on board. I hope you've enjoyed this call and this discussion for chords and harmonic analysis and the theory side of jazz with Eric. Shout out to Eric. Link in the description for his channel and his great video on getting your PhD in jazz in 15 minutes. Please post any questions you have. There was a lot of information in that conversation, so if there's anything that's unclear, just make YouTube comments here, and maybe we'll extract other topics for future collaborations we have between Eric and I. Thank you very much, and I will see you next time. Take care.